If you've ever been in a roller coaster relationship, you know how it goes. You think you're in love, maybe you are, but things get so twisted up you can't tell right from wrong anymore. That was me with my ex-girlfriend. I met her at a friend's party a couple of years back, and she seemed like everything I wanted at the time. She was fun and spontaneous, but in hindsight, she was also manipulative and draining. In the beginning, she was sweet. We'd spend hours talking about everything under the sun, movies, politics, dreams of traveling. She'd always say, "You get me like no one else does." But looking back, I realized she never really talked about herself. It was always about my likes, my interests, my aspirations, and what I could do for her. I didn't notice it at first. I was too wrapped up in the whirlwind romance, those late-night drives and impromptu weekend adventures that seemed so thrilling. But the signs were there. She'd often borrow money for random things, a dress she had to have, or a concert ticket that was too good to pass up. I'd pay without thinking twice, always assuming she'd pay me back or that it was just part of the relationship, give and take. Then came her mood swings. One minute she'd be ecstatic, the next she'd be crying over something trivial. I found myself walking on eggshells, trying to keep her happy. "You never listen to me," she'd say during arguments. It felt like she was shifting the blame, but I was too caught up to see it clearly. Maybe it was the guilt, or maybe I really believed I was the problem. Our friends started noticing too. They'd ask, "Is everything all right?" Or, "She seemed upset last night." I'd brush it off, saying she was just having a rough day. But it wasn't just one day. It was every day, every time we were together. I was always the one mending things, always the one apologizing. The wake-up call came when she used my car without asking one day. She claimed it was an emergency, but I later found out it was just to meet some friends. That was the first crack in the facade, the moment I started questioning if this relationship was worth it. Yet, I let it slide, hoping it was just a one-time thing. But then it happened again, and again. She pushed boundaries, taking more than she ever gave. She'd show up unannounced, expecting me to drop everything for her. "You promised you'd be there for me," she'd say, as if that excused her behavior. It was like she had some hold over me, and I couldn't see how it was all unraveling. The final straw came during a family dinner. She'd been complaining all week about wanting to meet my parents, so I finally set it up. But when the day came, she was distant, barely engaging in conversation. Afterward, she'd say, "Your family isn't what I expected. I thought they'd be more interesting." It was as if meeting them was a chore she had to endure, not something she genuinely wanted. I felt humiliated, caught between defending my family and trying to understand why she didn't care. It was clear she never intended to be part of my life, just to take what she could until she got bored. And she did get bored. Eventually, she called it quits, saying, "I think we're better off as friends." That was the end, just like that. Her departure left me reeling. I was angry, embarrassed, but mostly relieved. Finally free from the emotional roller coaster. I could see things clearly. She'd used me, and I'd let her. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but I knew I wasn't going to let it happen again. The experience taught me a hard lesson, one I hope I'll never have to learn twice. Last spring, I found myself standing at a crossroads in my life. It was a time when everything felt like it was either falling apart or about to come together. The weight of my recent breakup with my ex-girlfriend had left me in a confusing place. I was questioning everything, my decisions, my capacity for love, and whether I could ever trust anyone again. I didn't know if I was ready to put myself out there, but the fear of being stuck was even more terrifying. The breakup wasn't dramatic or explosive. It was more of a slow unraveling. We had been together for 3 years, and over time, the spark just faded. We both felt it, but didn't want to admit it. There were nights when we'd sit silently in the living room, me scrolling through my phone, and her lost in whatever show was on TV. It got to a point where the silence spoke louder than any argument could. "You know, maybe we need a break," she had said one evening. Her voice was calm, too calm for my liking. I remember looking at her, searching for any sign of emotion, but her face was unreadable. It was like she had already moved on in her mind. "Yeah, maybe you're right," I responded, trying to match her composure. Inside, I felt a pang of fear. What if this break turned into something permanent? But I couldn't show it. I wouldn't give her that satisfaction, or so I thought. After she left, I spent a lot of time alone, thinking about where it all went wrong. My friends tried to pull me out of my funk, but I wasn't ready to be around people. They'd say things like, "You'll find someone better," or it's her loss, man. But those words felt hollow. I needed to process things in my own time. The hardest part was the nights when I couldn't sleep, lying in bed with nothing but my thoughts. I replayed conversations, analyzed every little thing, wondering how I could have done things differently. But no matter how much I tried, I couldn't pinpoint the exact moment we started drifting apart. It was like trying to catch smoke with my bare hands. Work became my refuge, a place where I could lose myself in tasks and forget about my personal life for a few hours. My coworkers noticed I was more engaged, but they didn't know the real reason behind it. I wasn't being productive out of passion. I was using work as a distraction. Despite the turmoil, there was a part of me that still believed in love. I wasn't ready to give up on the idea of finding someone who truly understood me. But the thought of starting over, of going through the awkward first dates and the uncertainty of new relationships, was daunting. I worried that my trust issues would sabotage any future relationship before it even began. Then there was the fear of emotional collapse. What if I let someone in, and they broke me even more? It was a risk I wasn't sure I could handle. But staying closed off was just as risky. I didn't want to become bitter or jaded, yet the thought of being vulnerable again made my stomach twist. I knew I had to make a decision. Either let the past define me or use it to grow stronger. But the path forward wasn't clear, and I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, unsure if I should leap or retreat. I couldn't stay in limbo forever, though. Something had to give, and soon. In the middle of all this, I started noticing small details that I hadn't before, like the way couples looked at each other in cafes or how my friends interacted with their partners. It made me realize that, despite everything, I still wanted that connection. But first, I had to get past my own doubts and insecurities. What would you have done? Sometimes I wondered if there was a right answer or if I just had to take a chance and see where it led. The stakes were high, but I couldn't let fear hold me back forever. As spring unfolded around me, so did the possibility of something new, if only I could find the courage to take the next step. I sat on my couch, phone in hand, staring at the text messages I'd sent over the past month. Most of them were unanswered, floating in the digital void. Hey, how's your day going? Miss you. Are you free this weekend? Each message felt like a pebble tossed into a well, never to be heard from again. My mind kept racing, searching for a reason why she'd pulled back so suddenly. For weeks, I'd been trying to piece together fragments of our last conversation, hoping to understand what had changed. Noah's apartment was quiet, almost too quiet. It was the kind of silence that made you hyper-aware of your own thoughts. I remembered the last time she had been here. We had spent the evening laughing, making plans for the summer. It felt genuine, like we were on the same page. But then, she had started to disappear, little by little. Her texts became sporadic, her calls non-existent. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what. Finally, my phone buzzed. It was her. My heart pounded as I hesitated before answering. Hey, I said, trying to sound casual. Long time no chat. There was a pause on the other end, a heavy silence that made my chest tighten. Hi, Noah, she said, her voice distant. I've been meaning to call you. Yeah, I've noticed, I replied, trying to keep the conversation light. So what's up? Everything okay? Another pause. I've been thinking a lot about us, she said finally. Her words hung in the air, making my stomach drop. I knew where this was headed, but part of me still hoped for a different outcome. Okay, I replied, choosing my words carefully. You've been pretty quiet lately. I know, and I'm sorry for that, she said. I just needed some time to process everything. Process what? I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. She sighed, and the sound was like a final nail in the coffin. I think we need to take a break. I need some space to figure things out. The words hit me like a gust of cold air. My mind went blank for a moment. Is this about something I did? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. No, Noah, it's not you, she said, sounding exhausted. I just need to be on my own right now. It's been hard for me, too. Her words didn't make me feel any better. Instead, they left a hollow feeling in my chest. I wanted to argue, to plead, but something held me back. Maybe it was the finality in her voice, or maybe it was the realization that I couldn't force her to stay. Okay, I said quietly, trying to mask the hurt. I get it. I just wish you'd told me sooner. I'm sorry, she repeated, and I believed her. But apologies didn't change the fact that I was losing her. I hope we can still be friends, she added, almost as an afterthought. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. Yeah, sure, I said, though the words felt hollow. We both knew friendships rarely worked out after something like this. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, the phone still in my hand. The room felt even quieter now, the silence almost mocking. I looked around Noah's apartment, at the things she'd left behind, the little reminders of the time we'd spent together. A framed photo on the shelf caught my eye, a snapshot of happier days. I wondered if I'd ever feel that way again. What would you have done in my shoes? It was a question that lingered in the back of my mind, refusing to be settled. I knew I needed to move on, to pick myself up and keep going. But at that moment, all I could feel was the weight of what was lost. Was I about to make it worse? I sat on the edge of the bed, the sheets still rumpled from where we had spent so many nights together. It was strange being there alone, surrounded by her absence. The messages from her were still fresh in my mind, each word echoing with a finality I wasn't ready to accept. I just don't feel the connection anymore, she'd said. It was like a punch to the gut, one I hadn't seen coming. How could she not feel it? We'd shared everything, or so I thought. I replayed the conversation in my head, trying to find the moment where things had started to go wrong. But all I kept seeing were the good times, the laughter, the shared secrets. It was hard to believe those moments hadn't meant as much to her as they did to me. I picked up the framed photo from the shelf, studying her smile. It had always seemed so genuine, so full of warmth. Now, it felt like a stranger's face. I put it back, feeling a pang of bitterness. Had she been pretending all along? Was I just a phase she needed to get through? My mind raced with questions, each one more painful than the last. I wanted to believe there was something more, some deeper reason for her leaving. But the truth was staring me in the face, and it was ugly. She'd said it was about the connection, or lack thereof, but to me, it felt like she had used me. For what? I wasn't sure. Comfort? Stability? Sex? The thought was like ice water down my spine. I tried to shake off the feeling, to convince myself that I was overthinking it. But the doubt lingered, insistent and gnawing. I knew I had to face it head on, but the idea of confronting her felt like stepping into a storm. What if she confirmed my worst fears? What if the person I thought I knew never really existed? The room felt colder, as if her absence had sucked out all the warmth. I wrapped the sheets around me, trying to feel something other than this hollow ache. It was a futile attempt. Every corner of the room was filled with her, and yet she wasn't there. It made me question everything. Our conversations, our plans, the future I thought we were building together. In that moment, I felt a mix of anger and sadness, a cocktail of emotions I couldn't quite decipher. She'd left without a fight, and that hurt more than I expected. Maybe I wasn't worth fighting for in her eyes, or maybe she was just too cowardly to face the truth. Either way, the result was the same. I was left to pick up the pieces alone. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how blind I'd been. I'd convinced myself that we were something special, that we had a connection others envied. But now, it seemed like I was the only one wearing rose-colored glasses. It was a hard pill to swallow, knowing I might have been the only one invested in this relationship. As I sat there, trying to make sense of it all, one thing became painfully clear. I felt used. Not just for sex, but emotionally. I'd opened up to her, let her in, and in return, I was left with nothing but questions and a broken heart. The betrayal cut deep, leaving wounds I wasn't sure would heal anytime soon. I knew I had to find a way to move on, to let go of the anger and resentment. But in that moment, it felt impossible. She'd taken something from me, something I couldn't easily get back. Trust, maybe. Or perhaps it was just the belief that what we had was real. Either way, I was left with the aftermath, trying to navigate my way through the wreckage. I stood up, determined to leave the bedroom and all its memories behind, if only for a little while. I needed space to clear my head, to breathe. But as I turned to leave, I couldn't help but glance back at the photo on the shelf. It seemed to mock me with its frozen happiness, a reminder of what once was and what could never be again. Or was this just the start of the real problem? January was always cold, and that day was no exception. I remembered the chill in the air as I walked to the cafe where I was supposed to meet my friend. Let's call him my friend, though that's probably too generous a term for what he turned out to be. We had known each other for years, and I never doubted that our friendship was genuine. That day, he seemed tense, but I brushed it off, thinking he just needed to talk. We grabbed our drinks and headed back to his place, as we often did. Netflix was our usual go-to, and I found comfort in the routine. But something felt off that afternoon. My friend kept glancing at me, and there was a strange energy in the room. I tried to ignore it, telling myself I was just imagining things. "You okay?" I asked, hoping to break the tension. He just nodded and focused on the TV screen. It happened so fast. One moment we were sitting there, laughing at a dumb comedy, and the next, his hand was on my leg, inching closer. I froze, not understanding what was happening. "Hey, what are you doing?" I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't answer. Instead, he moved in closer, his intentions suddenly clear, and I felt a wave of panic wash over me. I pushed him away, stunned and trying to process the betrayal. "Stop!" I almost shouted, my voice shaking. He backed off, but the damage was done. The person I thought was my friend had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. I left immediately, not even bothering to look back. The cold air hit my face as I stepped outside, but it couldn't numb the hurt inside me. After that day, everything changed. I couldn't shake the feeling of being violated, used by someone I trusted. It lingered in my mind, creeping into every corner of my thoughts. I avoided him, avoided talking about what happened. It was easier to pretend it didn't exist than to face the reality of it all. But the memories haunted me, slipping into my dreams and turning them into nightmares. When I started dating again, I realized how deeply the incident had affected me. Intimacy became a minefield, every touch a potential threat. I flinched at the slightest movement, my mind flashing back to that day in January. It wasn't fair to the people I dated, and it wasn't fair to me. I was trapped in a cycle of fear, unable to let anyone get close enough to hurt me again. I began linking everything back to that moment. My fear of intimacy wasn't just about physical boundaries. It was the fear of being used, of my trust being taken advantage of. It was as if every relationship was a potential replay of that day, and I couldn't bear the thought of going through it again. I questioned my judgment, my ability to see people for who they really were. Each failed relationship reinforced the belief that I was only good for being used, nothing more. It was a dark place to be, but I couldn't seem to climb out. My friend's betrayal had planted a seed of doubt that grew into a forest of insecurity. I was lost in it, trying to find a path back to trusting others and myself. But the shadows of that January afternoon were long, and they followed me everywhere I went. Looking back, I realized I hadn't just lost a friend that day, I had lost a part of myself. The careless laughter and easy trust were gone, replaced by walls I didn't know how to tear down. I wondered if I would ever feel normal again, if I'd ever be able to let someone in without the fear of being used as a stepping stone, a means to an end. And yet, despite everything, I held on to a sliver of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to heal. But first, I needed to confront the past and the person who had turned my world upside down. Until then, the fear remained, a constant reminder of what happens when trust is shattered in the blink of an eye. Was I about to make it worse? I found myself at the park again, sitting on the same bench where I used to watch couples stroll by, holding hands. Now, it felt like I was on the outside looking in. The air was crisp, and the trees overhead were starting to shed their leaves. People walked past, absorbed in their own worlds, oblivious to the turmoil in mine. I glanced at my phone, the screen still showing the last few texts from acquaintances who had drifted away. Reaching out felt like a gamble. Who could I trust? Every name in my contacts seemed to come with a question mark. I needed to talk to someone, anyone who might understand. The name of my close friend lingered in my mind. We hadn't spoken much since everything fell apart, but he'd always been a good listener. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen. Did I really want to open up? Risk letting someone in again? What if it's a mistake? I muttered under my breath, the words getting lost in the rustle of leaves. But the need for connection was stronger than my fear. I typed a brief message, "Hey, can we talk?" and hit send before I could overthink it. The seconds stretched into minutes as I waited for a reply, my heart doing an anxious dance in my chest. Finally, my phone buzzed. "Sure, what's up?" Read the text. I exhaled, a little of the tension leaving my shoulders. It felt good to know someone was there, ready to listen. I started typing, unsure of how to sum up the chaos in a few sentences. "I've been struggling," I wrote, feeling like I can't trust anyone. "It's been hard to shake off." He replied quickly, his words offering a temporary balm. "I'm here for you. Want to talk about it?" As I typed back, the words flowed more easily, like a dam breaking. I told him about the betrayal, the constant fear, and the nagging doubt that anyone could ever be trustworthy again. It felt like purging a poison from my system, each line a small act of defiance against the isolation that had gripped me. His responses were thoughtful, filled with understanding. You've been through a lot. It's okay to feel this way. Healing takes time. For a moment, I felt lighter, like I wasn't carrying the burden alone. But as the conversation wound down, a familiar loneliness crept back in. Our exchange had been comforting, but the park still felt empty, and the world still seemed indifferent to my struggle. I thanked him for his time, promising to catch up in person soon. As I put my phone away, I realized that while the chat had helped, it was a band-aid on a deeper wound. My friend could offer support, but he couldn't walk the path for me. I was the one who had to find my way back to trust, to let down my guard without feeling like I was giving away too much. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft hues of pink and orange. I felt a chill in the air, a reminder that the days were getting shorter. Standing up, I took one last look at the bench where I'd spent so many afternoons lost in thought. I started walking, unsure of where I was headed, but knowing that I'd have to face the uncertainty ahead. Would I ever let someone in again? Would I ever trust without hesitation? Those questions lingered as I left the park, unanswered but not forgotten. The shower had always been my refuge, a place where the steam could cloud my thoughts and the water could wash away the day's grime. But standing there, I felt more exposed than ever, like the hot water was peeling back the layers I'd so carefully constructed. I wanted to believe I was healing, but the thoughts that crept in seemed to suggest otherwise. As the water ran down my face, I felt a familiar heaviness in my chest, the kind that made it hard to breathe, as if each droplet was adding to the weight. Why can't I just let go? I mumbled to myself, hoping the sound of my own voice would drown out the darker thoughts. But they were persistent, whispering in the back of my mind, a cruel reminder of my vulnerabilities. I leaned against the tiled wall, the coolness cutting through the heat of the shower. Memories flashed like a slideshow, each one tugging at a different heartstring. The good times, the laughter, the sense of belonging, followed by the moments of betrayal, the feeling of being utterly alone. I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began anymore. Is it ever going to get better? I asked the emptiness around me, knowing there would be no reply. The silence was my only companion, a stark contrast to the chaos in my mind. I toyed with the idea of giving up, letting everything go. Would it be easier to just stop fighting? To let the darkness take over and embrace the void? The thought terrified me, but it was there, tempting in its promise of escape. I felt tears mix with the shower water, indistinguishable but present. My knees gave way, and I slid down to the floor, the water now a distant roar above me. Every fiber of my being was screaming for relief, for some sign that I wasn't lost forever. I sat there, trying to piece together the fragments of my resolve. The idea of giving up loomed larger than ever, a shadow threatening to engulf me. I knew I needed to make a choice, to decide if I'd continue this uphill battle or surrender to whatever awaited me at the bottom. For a fleeting moment, I imagined what it would be like to let go entirely, to not have to face another day of uncertainty. The thought was both comforting and terrifying. How had I gotten here? And more importantly, how would I ever climb back out? It was hard to shake the feeling of hopelessness, the sense that maybe this was all there was for me, a constant struggle with no end in sight. Yet, somewhere deep inside, a flicker of defiance lingered. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was there. A part of me still held on to the possibility of something better, even if it felt like a distant dream. As I pressed my forehead against my knees, I realized I was crying in earnest now. The sobs came in waves, each one peeling away another layer until I was raw and exposed. The breakdown was complete, a release of everything I'd kept locked away for too long. Eventually, as the water began to cool, I knew I couldn't stay there forever. I had to make a decision, one way or another. The idea of giving up lingered, but so did the faint hope that things could change. It would be a long road, but maybe, just maybe, it was one worth taking. I stood up slowly, my legs shaky but holding. The water dripped from my hair and into my eyes, blurring my vision but not my resolve. It was time to step out of the shower, to leave behind the thoughts that had threatened to pull me under. For now, I choose to keep going, even if it was just for one more day. What would you have done in my place? I dried off and wrapped myself in a towel, heading straight to my phone. My hands were still trembling, but I managed to unlock the screen. Notifications had piled up, a few messages from my friend, some social media alerts I ignored. But it was the last message that caught my eye. You need to call your therapist. It wasn't a suggestion, it was more like an order. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at those words. My mind played ping pong with itself. Part of me just wanted to crawl under the covers and hide from the world, but the other part knew that wouldn't solve anything. Even if I called, what would I say? Hey, I'm spiraling, can you fix me? Before I could chicken out, my phone buzzed again. My friend's name flashed on the screen, and I hesitated for a moment before answering. You get my text? They asked, skipping the small talk. Yeah, I got it. I replied, trying to sound more composed than I felt. Then why are you still sitting there? Call your therapist, now. Seriously, what's stopping you? They pressed. I sighed. I don't know, I don't see the point. What's a phone call going to change? It's not about the call. It's about taking the first step. You owe it to yourself to try. Silence hung between us, heavy and suffocating. They were right, of course. I knew it, but admitting it was the hard part. My thumb hovered over my therapist's contact, fingers twitching with indecision. You still there? My friend asked, their voice softer now. Yeah, I'm here. I don't know what to say to them. Say whatever. Say you feel like you're drowning. Say you need help. Just say something. I nodded, even though they couldn't see me. Okay. I whispered, more to myself than to them. Promise me you'll call? I promise. We said our goodbyes, and I hung up. The room felt strangely quiet without their voice, leaving me alone with my thoughts again. I took a deep breath and finally hit the call button. My heart raced as I listened to the ringing, each tone amplifying the panic swirling inside me. Hello. My therapist's voice came through, calm and steady. Hi, it's me. I managed to say, my voice cracking a little. How are you doing? They asked, and the sincerity in their voice was almost my undoing. I'm not okay, I admitted. Everything feels like it's falling apart. Thank you for calling. That's the first step, they said. Let's talk about what's going on. I didn't have all the answers, but for the first time in a while, I felt like there might be a way forward. It wasn't going to be easy, but knowing I wasn't alone in this fight gave me a flicker of hope. After hanging up, I sat there for a moment, letting the conversation sink in. My friend had been right. It wasn't about the call itself, but what it represented. A small step, maybe, but a step nonetheless. I was still shaken, still unsure of what the future held, but at least I had taken that first step. What would you have done? Later that evening, I had a call scheduled with my therapist. I sat on the couch, phone in hand, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. My thumb hovered over the call button, hesitating. Opening up again felt daunting. I took a deep breath, finally pressing the button. Hello. How are you feeling today? My therapist asked, her voice calm and inviting. I don't know, I admitted. It's hard to even figure out what to say. That's okay, she replied gently. We can start wherever you feel comfortable. There's no rush. I sighed, the sense of relief from earlier fading as old doubts crept back in. I'm just not sure what's real anymore, I said, my voice shaking. Everything feels like it's slipping away. Let's break it down, she suggested. Focus on one thing at a time. What's something concrete you can identify right now? I paused, thinking about my day. The call with my friend, those encouraging words. I did talk to a friend earlier. They helped me see that maybe I'm not as alone as I thought. That's a great start, she said. Connection is important. What did you find helpful about that conversation? I hesitated, trying to find the words. I guess they didn't judge me, just listened. Validation and support can be powerful, she noted. Remember, opening up doesn't mean having all the answers. It's about sharing your state of mind. But what if I don't even know where my mind is at? I asked, frustration creeping in. That's part of the journey, she replied. Let's work on acknowledging where you are, without putting pressure on yourself to have everything figured out. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I just want to feel stable again. And you will, she reassured. It takes time. Let's focus on the small steps, like reaching out to talk, and build from there. Her words made sense, but it was hard to imagine taking more steps when even the first one had been a struggle. It feels like I'm barely hanging on, I confessed. That's okay too, she said. Sometimes, holding on is enough. Give yourself credit for the strength it takes to do even that. I held the phone tighter, her calm voice steadying me. I guess I hadn't thought about it like that. It's about perspective, she said. You're moving forward, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. Every call, every conversation, is another step toward stability. I was silent, absorbing her words. A part of me wanted to believe her, to hold on to that small bit of hope I'd felt earlier. I'm trying, I said finally. That effort counts, she affirmed. You're not alone in this. We'll take it one step at a time. As the call ended, I sat there, feeling a little more settled. The doubts weren't gone, but I felt a slight shift, like a door had cracked open, letting in a sliver of light. It wasn't much, but it was something. Maybe that's how it started, one tiny glimmer at a time. Would you have found hope in that moment? Epilogue. 3 weeks had passed since I decided to seek therapy. Initially, I was skeptical about sharing my feelings with a stranger, but I recognized the emotional toll of pretending everything was fine. I kept telling myself, it's just talking, but I knew it was more profound than that. My therapist, Dr. Emily Peters, listened with a patience that made me feel truly heard. During our first session, she asked, "What do you want to get out of this?" I replied, "I want to feel safe in my own mind again." It felt liberating to voice that desire. Dr. Peters introduced the concept of emotional safety, which shifted my focus from just being physically and socially okay to acknowledging my internal feelings. Her reminder that your feelings are valid became a mantra, bringing me relief. As sessions progressed, I confronted buried moments from my past and began recognizing patterns in my life. I learned to set boundaries, which initially felt awkward but became essential for my well-being. I practiced saying no, gaining confidence with each attempt. Friends noticed the subtle changes in me, and I started building a support system. Therapy provided me with tools to navigate my journey, helping me embrace the process of healing rather than rushing to a finish line. I felt hopeful for the first time, realizing I was living intentionally rather than just surviving.